traditionally calls her Kristy Jo, but I like that, Kristy Jo. And that's because I'm from the South, and down South everyone has two names. Down South I'm Roger Dale. She's a long-term student of holistic wellness with a traditional background in finance. Kristy is the owner of Peacock Place Vacation Rental in Harvard, Michigan. And you can find her blog, All Things Good, at facebook.com/lifecraft. Kristy Jo Putnam.
Good evening.
Hi.
I have a special story tonight. It's special to me because it's the first I've written in over a year and a half, and this is my first performance. This is a story of transformation that I call He Hit Me Happy. Within 6 seconds of first contact, a stranger punched me in the eye. It was the 4th of July, 2014. I was driving home and noticed it was 10:31 and the city fireworks show began at 10:30. I pulled up Google Maps on my phone and found a road that turned and went all the way to the beach where I could watch the explosions in the sky. As I drove down the dark dirt road, it soon became evident that it wasn't really a road. The trees became more and more dense as I passed each driveway. I considered turning around at the fourth and last house, but I didn't want to disturb their peace. I continued on, thankful for my all-wheel drive Subaru, as the potholes were full of mud and getting bigger. To my left was a ravine, and to my right were dense woods growing closer to the road. I grew apprehensive as I realized that before me was a metal gate blocking my path. After I finished my 30-point turn, there was a man with a flashlight blocking my path. He stopped in front of my car and yelled, "What are you doing back here?" He quickly approached, grabbed my left arm where it rested through the open window, and punched my eye with the yellow flashlight, throwing my glasses to the passenger door. I'm not here to tell you what happened the night of that fateful random act of violence, nor do I want to disappoint you with the failings of our court system. My wish is to share with you a story of transformation, a journey of healing. Maybe you have seen the TED Talk entitled A Stroke of Insight. A brain scientist had the opportunity to research how the brain works from the inside out when she had a stroke. She described her experience as hitting the reset button. I like to think of myself as an amateur brain scientist. When I was a kid, my background included computer science. If we were more technologically advanced, perhaps I would have entered the field of artificial intelligence. So I too was fascinated with the cognitive impairment that I experienced. This assault was my 6th head injury. I didn't understand until months later that I was suffering from post-concussive syndrome, the cumulative effects of trauma. I kept missing appointments because I could not use my former systems. 6 months into rehab, I still could not type or text or even hold a pen long enough to write more than a sentence or two. I reluctantly started dating a new man who described me as someone who had an unusual fascination with dry erase boards. I had 10. My primary goal in life was to become an accomplished writer, and so I sunk into a deep depression, so much grief and denial, and then so much more anger. When driving down the highway with no one in sight, I would randomly flip the bird to the world, I guess. And then began the panic attacks, a new experience for me, and then came the fear. Not only did I not want to get into my car, now I didn't even want to walk across the highway to teach Tai Chi in the park. People didn't understand. My injury was invisible. You may have seen a movie in which Susan Sarandon played a woman with early onset Alzheimer's. She remarked, "I would rather have cancer." I understood what it was like to crave compassion. I just needed help, but it was so difficult to ask. and I couldn't afford to hire a caregiver. My traumatic brain injury was not as bad as a stroke, but my routines were gone, and life as I knew it was lost. I learned that the things I thought were permanent were not. Even my personality changed when the chemicals in my brain moved and broke the connections between the hemispheres. But I didn't realize it yet. I had just closed my art gallery 2 months after its grand opening, but I didn't equate this occurrence with my injury. And I was still registered for my weekly pottery class and was confused when the teacher called to offer me a refund. I naively attempted life as normal, though I was barely driving. My mental health suffered as I faced failure after failure. I was wearing a neck brace, alone in my home, laying in bed for much of the day, and I should have been resting even more, but I was a total type A personality. I just wanted to go, go, go. And so I hurt myself even more. The anxiety, nerve pain, and muscle spasms were so excruciating, I had to go against my lifetime belief of no doctors or meds. In time, I learned to use my phone as my memory. If I didn't text myself a thought before I had another, it was lost. About 6 months into rehab, my physical therapist said, "How many times have I shown you how to do that?" Her unusual exasperation baffled me. As I lay on my side on that giant Pilates contraption, slowly moving my leg forward and back, I watched my leg bounce. I could not figure out how to even my stride, and I thought, am I not progressing well? Suddenly, I realized that though I was walking and moving, my brain was not communicating with my muscles. I began to understand the long path of recovery. When I began planning my suicide, I put my house on the market. It happens to 1 in 3 with post-concussive syndrome, but again, I didn't know that at the time. I decided to reach out to the people in my life looking for a reason to live. I soon realized that I loved my house and the life that I had created, and gosh darn it, my brain was going to work again. When I researched brain plasticity about 1.5 years into rehab, I learned that I could expect 3 years until I felt normal again, or maybe the damage was permanent. But I made a choice to believe that I was healed now, that the connections between my hemispheres were growing stronger each day. And I decided it was time to exercise my brain and learn about anything that interested me. I found my passion again when I looked back to see what had made me the most happy in the past. I remembered that I used to frequent retreat centers, and I got on the search engine until I found one 2 hours from my house. The biggest blessing in this challenge was that I slowed down and found a calm that I had never known. During rehab, I could no longer be an obsessive doer. You can't get much slower than tranquilized. And I somehow became someone who can tell a joke. Even my friends were surprised that I had found humor. In this new peaceful, happy state, I could once again hear the still small voice within. I returned to my path and I found a new calling. I began school this August to become a physical therapist. And better yet, I know the title of the book I'm writing.
You know, I said Greg had a great costume, but I want to point out how beautiful her costume is. When you stood up there to tell the story with the light, and she has this feather in her hair. She looks great tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, Kristy Jo Putnam.